staff, we will continue. Item 12, budget, no, 13, budget update, sorry.
I'll move,
Welcome.
Madam Chair.
Oh, second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Yes.
Just like to acknowledge the Chief Financial Officer and Mr Kimpton for working out the OPEX on Marlborough Hall, the youth facility in Kaipatiki. They've spent quite a lot of time on this. It's a small number, but the money had to be found somewhere, and I just appreciate the work that the finance staff have done in that regard, and Matthew, of course, too. But I just have one question on the B, and that is it. In the B motion, it talks about an underwrite, and then at paragraph 14, it talks about a contribution. They're two different things. So which is it? This is the New Zealand Fire Service 100,000. Is it an underwrite, or is it a contribution?
So from the New Zealand Fire Service, that's a contribution.
So should the motion then be amended to read up to 100,000 is contributed?
Yeah, through Madam Chair, if I could just clarify that a little bit. There is the commitment from the New Zealand Fire Service for the $100,000 towards the building of the station. The underwriting from Auckland Rural Fire is to cover the Puhoi has still got funding applications out there, yep. And any funding that Puhoi get will come off that 495.
Okay, thank you. And look, there's one other person I forgot to acknowledge, and that's Kay McIntyre, the chair of the Kaipatiki local board, who is an accountant and a tenacious one and knows the ropes, and hunted that money down for her community. I just have to acknowledge the rigour in which she approached that item.
Thank you for that, and yes, I acknowledge Kay, and she said she wouldn't speak, but she wanted to be here, so she sat here all day. Thank you very much, Kay, for that. And Brian, your work on the Puhoi Volunteer Rural Fire, you know how very dear to my heart that those people. So, yeah, great. So it's been moved and seconded. Councillor Cashmore.
Just a question to Mr Cartell, if I may, Madam Chair. And looking into the future, Brian, the fire service is amalgamating to one body, so how is that going to play out as far as asset replacement, such as this substantial asset, or even less substantial efforts like the vehicles and so on? How's that going to play out going into the future?
Well, the bill, we're just commenting on the bill currently, and how it's said is on the 1st of July 2017, the assets must be available to FENZ. So there's no current agreement with the transfer of assets at this point. It says the assets must be available to Fire and Emergency New Zealand.
Okay, and nothing's been commented about future replacement, refurb, anything like that from FENZ?
No, not with respect to this location, although this location is seen as a strategic location given how it services both the tunnel and the motorways north and south.
Something we have to look into.
Yeah.
Something we have to monitor going forward, Madam Chair, I think.
Sorry?
It's something we're going to have to monitor going forward, bearing in
yes.
mind the extensive greenfield growth areas that we have, and there's a volunteer fire brigades dotted right through them.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And we've got a lot of them. Okay. So it's been moved and seconded. If there are no other questions, I'll put it. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Okay. Moving right on. Item 14. Who've we got? Sarah? Bernard. Yep. That's all right. And right, welcome Sarah.
Thank you. Tēnā koutou katoa. My name's Sarah Howard and I'm here in the place of Johnny Freeland today. talking to you about the Te Tō Takatini portfolio year-end report. Just as a quick summary, the year-end expenditure for 2015-2016 was $8,928,000 against a budget of $9,010,000, a variance of $82,000. There are some highlights of activity to note. $1,086,000 was invested to support marae and papakainga via the Cultural Initiatives Investment Fund, which included $940,000 in grants to 7 marae and $146,000 invested in 3 papakainga entities. In the treaty audit space, the Waharoa Group determined that 5 out of 24 action groups are now considered closed. On the 8th of June 2016, the Executive Leadership Group of Te Tō Takatini approved the inclusion of 10 new initiatives into the 2016-17 annual plan. And lastly, the Year 2 long-term plan budget envelope for the Māori Transformational Shift activity remains at $9,908,000. And happy to take any questions through the chair.
Great, thank you. Questions? Councillor Casey.
In the report itself and in the targets, well, there's not a target, I think that's the question I'm going to ask you about. The work on Māori sites of significance has been ongoing. Can you just talk a bit more about that and whether there's been any work done on sites of interest?
That's probably a bit of detail that I don't have at the moment. Can I? Yeah, she's not here. I do know that that's probably a point of issue when we tried to get some detail around the implications of the unitary plan recommendations, and it's a sort of a space.
And I think we've got to be really careful not to
actually
discuss
look at the report, page 112.
Thank you,
it's listed
Councillor
here.
Casey. We have all just signed, declarations of interest.
I'm asking a question about a bit in the report.
And
Page 112.
we can't discuss what's in the unitary plan. I'm just trying to be sensible. So maybe if we're being sensible, we won't put the officer on the spot by asking her questions about it.
What?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have that detail over that piece of work.
Right, any other questions? Member Taipuri.
Kia ora, Madam Chair. Tēnā. Can you just explain the function of Te Waharoa?
The Waharoa Group. So the Waharoa Group is a group that consists of internal audit representation, members of the IMSB Secretariat, and a member from Te Waka Angamoa. And the function of it is to agree on the detail of what is needed to consider something closed within the treaty audit. So the treaty audit recommendations can be quite, what's the word for it, debatable, and that Waharoa is about gaining consensus on what we need to do, what Auckland Council needs to do to meet the recommendation from the treaty audit, and then also to meet and come to an agreement on when we consider it closed and actually actioned.
Okay. So just so give some context, why I asked that question is that it is my understanding that over time the terminology being used is consistently changing, which makes it quite difficult to measure the previous reporting and what's currently happening. Can you say that when you do make those changes, which I think is not helpful for trying to measure success, did any of that go through to Waharoa?
I think that we've come to an agreement with the Waharoa Group and the IMSB Secretariat on our wording in the last couple of reports and trying to keep quite consistent, especially over the last 2 quarterly reports, and what we call in term recommendations and action groups and things like that, keeping quite consistent on that. We've made a point of trying to do that.
So you're saying that has happened, because I understand it hasn't.
What are you asking again? Whether we've
Whether
been...
Te Waharoa has had a function in agreeing with the changes of the terminology being used against the audit program and in order to measure Because I understand that hasn't happened.
My understanding's different. We have
Okay.
discussed it, yeah.
Okay, thanks for that answer. Just on page 107, attachment A, there's a reprioritisation of 1 million. What is the process for reprioritising that and to where?
So my understanding of that was that 1 million was that it was treated as an accrual of an underspend, and it's intended to be spent on a partnership with central government on some housing initiatives that will have good outcomes for Māori. I don't know the details of exactly what that money is going to get spent on, because those discussions are happening amongst ELT at the moment.
So there's
Mr.
other...
Chief, I think the Chief Executive is going to make a comment about that.
Phyllis.
I want to ask his other question and I'll answer.
Oh, no, I'm happy to hear what you have to say first.
So the details of any commitment to actually spend it have not been worked out yet, mainly because we have not yet heard from the Minister's office the details of the program. So you may remember or know that Minister Bennett announced a $9 million initiative over 2 years, and they've invited us to partner. So we've essentially ring-fenced that money so that if we agree it's consistent with our objectives, we'll bring it through to Tuatakitini Executive Leadership Group. And if we like that program, we would be proposing to join it and make that program larger and more successful than it would otherwise be without our contribution.
I hear that answer. Thank you. Just under senior leadership and diversity training. As a result of the training to date, how many staff have benefited from the training?
I don't have the exact numbers on that.
Okay, so could I ask this question? How are the training outcomes being measured and monitored?
I would say that one of the ways that we can measure it at the moment is that when we carry out our Māori responsiveness planning amongst different departments, we have a staff survey as part of that, and the staff are asked about their capabilities in that space, and that is one way that we're wanting to track it going forward in the future.
Okay, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you, Councillor Casey.
It's the same page and it's the same item. The $770,000 that was allocated to Māori sites of significance is an underspend of $38,000. It's the same question really, but I would quite like an answer. Did that figure include sites of interest? You can answer it before tomorrow, would be good.
Okay.
Thank you.
And if so, how many?
Thank you. I'll move the recommendation. Do you want to second it? Yep.
Yes, Madam Chair, I'm happy to second it. Just not getting an answer, or...
Thank you.
Excuse me.
All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you.
This process.
Good try. Okay, item number 15. Oh, Debbie and John. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Hi.
Hi. So this is an update on the review that we're undertaking on non-rateable properties. We gave the first update in May, and it's just a progress report. The report is quite self-explanatory, but I just want to bring one thing to your attention, and that is that the focus for the next tranche of properties is churches, and the churches, there's about 1,000 of them around the region, and most, if not all of them, will require an inspection. And the reason that I draw this to your attention is for if you have churches within your constituencies who raise questions with you. The reason that most of them will need an inspection, I'll give you an example, is churches are being used for lots of different activities these days.
Yeah.
And a church might have a childcare facility or a play group. Others put in some money a week and they go for the tea and biscuits, and that wouldn't affect their rateability. Some churches may well portion out part of their property for commercial activity and have a childcare business running there, charging full fees. That would affect their rateability. So, and also we'd need to know what the portion was, and therefore we can apportion out the rates accordingly, according to the value of that portion. So most of these properties will require an inspection, and you may get some inquiries from your constituents. Happy to take questions on the report. Thank you.
Let's pray it goes well. And thank you, Debbie, for your work on the cemeteries. Interesting, that was. Councillor Darby.
Thank you, I appreciate this work. So just look at that quantum, that 344,000, that's our net gain to date.